Hello and welcome to I Want to Fight Araki, a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure close analysis podcast. I'm Thomas.
And I'm Jareth the Goblin King.
And today is a long time coming. I think we spent over, I want to say...
Too long.
Yeah, 15 episodes maybe, but we are finally at the end of Stardust Crusaders. It's been a long time coming. We got a lot of stuff to talk about as we wrap up this part of JoJo, so let's just jump right into the summary. Alright, so Dio begins to taunt Polnareff from the top of the stairs. He says that Polnareff was a good servant and says that if Polnareff walks down 2 of the stairs, Dio will accept him back into his service. Naturally, Polnareff refuses, but when he ascends to face Dio, he suddenly finds himself at the bottom once more. Polnareff tries to keep climbing the stairs and ends up at the bottom, but before Dio can finally attack with his stand, the world, Jotaro, Joseph, and Kakyoin burst through a wall carrying Nukasaku as Dio heads deeper into the mansion. Nukasaku shows the group where they can find Dio, sleeping in a coffin in a tall tower within the mansion grounds. They force Nukasaku to open the coffin, but when he does so, he suddenly finds himself inside and torn in half with his jaw ripped off. Everyone panics and makes their escape by jumping out of the tower and catching themselves on the side of the building. Joseph and Kakyoin believe that because of the setting sun, they will need to wait till morning before they fight Dio again, but Polnareff insists that they need to finish the job that night and storms off to look for Dio in the streets. Kakyoin is concerned about what to do, but Jotaro suggests a pincer attack. Dio will be chasing the retreating party, giving Polnareff time to attack from behind. As Joseph and Kakyoin commandeer a car, Jotaro meets up with Polnareff, saying that Joseph and Kakyoin ordered Jotaro to watch his back. As Dio stalks Joseph and Kakyoin, he attacks a visiting senator and forces him to pursue the duo, even making him drive on the sidewalk. As Dio gains on Joseph and Kakyoin, Kakyoin summons Hierophant Green to fire an emerald splash at Dio, which the vampire effortlessly deflects. Suddenly, the world appears in front of Hierophant Green and manages to punch the stand. Because of the distance, Kakyoin is able to survive, but he still takes serious damage. Kakyoin notices that Dio's car has stopped moving, and the senator goes flying through the Crusaders' back window, causing them to crash. Dio examines the wreckage but finds nothing, instead noticing the two swing up onto the top of a roof. Once on top, Joseph orders Kakyoin to run, but Kakyoin reveals that he has discovered a way to unearth the power of the world. As Kakyoin and Joseph swing through the streets of Cairo, Kakyoin recalls his backstory. As a child, Kakyoin was socially isolated because he was the only one who could see his stand, but once he met the Crusaders, he was able to relate and bond with them over their shared power. Back in the present, Kakyoin stands atop a tower in between 2 buildings and says that they can reveal the power of the world through making Hierophant Green disappear. When Dio comes to attack the two, suddenly Hierophant Green's emeralds come firing at Dio from all sides, even managing to scrape the vampire. When Dio is finally able to catch his breath, he notices that the entire arena is surrounded by Hierophant Green's wire, and that anything that trips the wire will immediately be fired upon. Dio composes himself and Kakyoin attacks with another emerald splash, but just before it hits, a hole is punched straight through Kakyoin and he is sent flying into a water tower. Just as Kakyoin is about to die, he processes the last attack and notices that all of Hierophant Green's wires broke simultaneously. Kakyoin is able to put 2 and 2 together and realizes that the power of the world is the ability to stop time. With his life fading away, Kakyoin thinks of his friends and fires an emerald splash at a nearby clock face to tell Joseph of Dio's power as Kakyoin dies. Joseph tries to use the opportunity to defeat Dio with Hermit Purple by wrapping himself with it and charging it with Hamon, but Dio shrugs it off. Joseph begins to run, Dio in hot pursuit, and realizes what Kakyoin's final message was. Dio uses the power of the world to disappear and sneak up on Joseph. Dio nearly attacks Joseph but hesitates, revealing that he correctly deduced Joseph's strategy, using Hermit Purple as a Hamon-infused vest to protect him from attacks. Dio praises Joseph's whip but says he has other means of attacking him, as the world breaks a nearby chimney, sending the debris flying into Joseph's chest, knocking him over the building. Joseph barely manages to break his fall with Hermit Purple. However, he happens to land in front of Jotaro. Joseph warns Jotaro to run as Dio stops time to plunge a knife into Joseph's throat. As Joseph begins to bleed out, Jotaro continues forward towards Dio, saying that there's no way to beat the shit out of him from his current position, and when Jotaro gets close enough, Star Platinum and the world finally clash. As the two stands fight, Jotaro and Dio begin to float into the air. Dio decides to stop time to end the battle quickly, but when he does so, he notices Jotaro's hand twitch. This panics Dio, and he decides to try not to risk a time stop immediately. The two fly around the city and clash more, and Dio stops time again, only this time realizing that Jotaro had slipped a magnet onto each one of their persons as a means of tricking Dio. Dio flies in for the kill, but Jotaro begins to move again unexpectedly and sends Star Platinum's fist through the world's chest, shocking Dio. Once time resumes, Dio goes flying into a jewelry store, losing his leg in the process. Dio naturally survives and drains the attendant of her blood to heal himself. Dio figures out that Jotaro is only able to move for a limited amount of time in stop time, and so when Jotaro jumps into the air to attack Dio, Dio stops time and begins throwing knives at Jotaro. Jotaro is able to deflect some of the knives using Star Platinum, but is ultimately bound back to stop time as Dio throws more knives. Once time resumes, Star Platinum is able to deflect more knives, but some still hit Jotaro, sending him plummeting to the ground. Jotaro is thankfully alive, however, having placed thick magazines in his uniform before the fight. However, Jotaro plans to play dead to lure Dio in for an easy kill. Just as Dio is about to kill Jotaro with a street sign, Polnareff steps in and plunges Silver Chariot's sword into Dio's head. Unfortunately, it is slightly to the left, and Dio stops time, tossing Polnareff into an adjacent wall. Dio prepares to finish off the unconscious Polnareff with the same sign, but Jotaro cracks his knuckles as a means to distract Dio. Dio, not wanting to take any chances, examines Jotaro and forces a cop to shoot at Jotaro, Star Platinum catching the bullet. Jotaro even uses Star Platinum to stop his heart temporarily. Dio decides that he'll just decapitate Jotaro just in case, but just as he is about to do so, Star Platinum resuscitates Jotaro, blocks the sign, and delivers a close-range punch that crushes Dio's skull, sending him into some steps nearby. With Dio's brain damaged, he can't regenerate as quickly, and as Jotaro steps toward him, Dio uses the whirl to stop time and grab onto a car that drags Dio to a manhole for a sewer, but when Dio opens the hole, he finds Jotaro inside, who uses Star Platinum to unleash a stand rush on Dio. Dio reveals that he was counting on this, however, as Jotaro's attack lands Dio right next to Joseph's body. Dio drains Joseph of his blood to recover his strength as Dio's fusion to Jonathan's body is complete and the final battle commences. Just before their clash, Joseph's spirit appears in front of Jotaro. He tells him that he had a fun time on their journey, but also tells Jotaro that no matter what happens, he cannot let his anger overwhelm him. But having seen his grandfather die, Jotaro cannot hold back his rage. The two fight once more, and once the stop time reaches 3 seconds, Star Platinum is summoned and is even able to do some damage to Dio. Unfortunately, the stop time resumes, reaching up to 9 seconds as the world unleashes a stand rush on Jotaro, breaking most of his bones and slamming him into the ground next to a river. As Jotaro tries to recover, Dio disappears and reappears, about to drop a steamroller on Jotaro. Jotaro is able to save himself using Star Platinum temporarily, but is ultimately crushed. Dio gloats to himself about how his time stop is lasting even longer, but when he tries to move, he finds his body stiffening, eventually stopping completely as Jotaro appears behind him, revealing that he used Star Platinum to stop time after 9 seconds. Jotaro breaks Dio's legs using Star Platinum, and time resumes, sending Dio to the floor. Jotaro says that he'll wait for him to heal because he doesn't want to kill a weak opponent. A final strike is thrown as Star Platinum delivers a punch to the world's roundhouse kick. For a moment, it looks as if Star Platinum is going to crack, but a ravine suddenly runs up the world's leg, ripping it in half, and Dio's body blowing off the head of the vampire. Jotaro looks over Dio's corpse and tells him that the only reason he lost was because he pissed off Jotaro. The Speedwagon Foundation comes to collect the fallen bodies of the Crusaders, as well as Dio's. The Speedwagon Foundation doctors believe that there is no way to revive Joseph, but Jotaro insists that they try something, a transfusion of Dio's blood. The procedure seems to work, but suddenly Joseph becomes possessed by Dio. Just as Jotaro is about to kill him with Star Platinum, though, Joseph reveals he was just making a dumb joke. As the Speedwagon Foundation celebrates Joseph's return, Jotaro tells Dio's body that they've finally taken back everything he stole from them. As the sun rises in Egypt, Jotaro and Joseph place Dio's body in the middle of the desert, and as sunlight breaks, it fades into dust as the duo thank Kakyoin, Iggy, and Avdol for their sacrifice. At Cairo International Airport, Polnareff prepares to return back to France. Joseph asks Polnareff if he would want to come back to New York with him, but Polnareff insists that France is his homeland. The group promises to see each other again someday, and as Jotaro and Joseph fly back to Japan, Holly awakens, sensing the return of her father and son. On the plane home, Jotaro looks at the picture of the Crusaders from their meeting with Iggy and smiles, but unbeknownst to Jotaro and Joseph, another bizarre adventure awaits them in the future. End of Stardust Crusaders. That was a chunky summary.
Weird Al canonically exists in the JoJo universe.
Yes, he does, and his stand will be called Amish Paradise, or Eat It.
Al, my man.
Alright, so we have a lot of stuff to break down. This is the end, as we've said many times. So lots of character arcs, lots of stuff to look forward into the future. So, Emily, did you have something you wanted to start with?
Bruh, I have several things I could start with.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to start with the boys or Sugar Daddy Dio?
Why don't we start with Dio?
Okay.
This is the first time we really get to see him full on.
Okay, so something funny about this dude. He's very funny.
Yes.
You ever just die from a punch to the shin that's just really, really hard? Honestly, you ever get punched in the shin, that really does hurt. It feels like I will indeed just die right there.
Your head will blow off.
Yep. Alright, so I have at least 2 points on this.
Mm-hmm.
I will start with, there's a reason why I introduced myself as Jareth the Goblin King. Because one, that is the fashion sense that I strive to achieve in my lifetime, as well as also, there are some similarities here.
Mm-hmm.
Several things. First of all, I would not be surprised if Dio's design, like, in part 1 especially, was, like, based off of Jareth, because 1, they, like, came out around the same time, and 2, we all know that my boy Araki actively thirsts after David Bowie.
As we'll see next part.
As we'll see next part, and the part after that, and the part after that, and then the part after that. Alright. Yeah, so, for several reasons, not just in looks, but also they function in an oddly similar way. They both lure people into their thing cult bullshit in a very similar way by being terrifyingly sensual and whatnot. Love that. Also, they both have very iconic standoffs, which is my personal favorite thing. I desperately want to edit the, Jotaro Dio over, like, the scene at the end of Labyrinth, where it's just like, I fought my way to the castle at the center of the Goblin City to take back the child that you have stolen. I want to edit it as, like, oh, you're approaching me? Instead of running away, you're coming right to me? I can't beat the shit out of you without getting closer. Oh, well, then come as close as you'd like. I want to edit that over the ending scene in Labyrinth.
I like how you memorize that whole thing.
It's not that hard to memorize. I
it's not.
So many things memorized, like the soup store thing.
And I will talk about it later, I guess, but I do honestly think that's like one of the most badass moments in the whole series.
Oh, it's great, but it's also one of my favorite meme moments in the whole series, because the things that people do with that, where they just take the subtitles and block out certain letters, that's literally I love that so much. It's like, when it comes to JoJo meme formats, it's like that one, and then like the thing in part 5 where they're all kicking the shit out of this guy. It's like those two are my favorites.
Yeah, but it is interesting, the cult angle. You know, we did briefly talk about that last episode, where like all of his minions have like a heart motif to them. But I think
his bottoms.
Yes.
We
his
all
cult
know
of
this.
bottoms. But I think it's interesting, like, I wrote down this quote here, where Dio, I forget who he's talking to, I think he's talking to Enya in a flashback, maybe, but he's basically saying that, like, people, or maybe it's Polnareff, actually, but he basically says people just want peace of mind.
I also wrote down that quote, how nice.
Yes, so, I think, I mean, it's interesting. We're going to talk about this more when it comes to Part 6, because Part 6 really dives into this concept. But I think...
I could make a Stand reference with that one. I won't.
It's also Part 6 Stand.
Yeah.
No, but it's interesting, you know. I think people like to say that, like, this is where Dio gets more philosophical as a villain in Part 3, and I don't know that I necessarily agree. I mean, we certainly have had scenes of him talking to other characters and, like, not necessarily being, like, full-on evil, but I think what really shows this is, like, this final fight. You know, this is where we get to see... Dio, like, the facade is broken. He's just gone full insane. He's gloating. He's maniacally laughing, you know. He's, like, freaking drilling holes in his head with his finger.
Oh, that was the part where I was like, my man's not okay.
Like, he has lost any sort of sense of, you know, calmness. And, like, this is who he is, you know, because it's, like, this is, like, a life or death situation. He acknowledges that. But, like, I think, you know, I think basically just what's being said here is that, like, no matter, like, how charming or how, you know, sensual, I guess you could say.
Terrifyingly sensual. You have to do that combination of words.
Sensual, a person may be, they're just, like, crazy and evil and, you know, not good, basically. Specifically, like, if they're a cult leader, I would say, because it is a cult, you know. And I just thought that was an interesting little detail.
Can we also acknowledge that part of his character is consistent from Part 1 to Part 3?
Yeah.
Where he's just, like, even in Part 1, that's something that for some reason I didn't realize. It's actually very consistent in that way, where his whole thing is that he's just, like, sort of pretending to be this, you know, he is pretty smart, as is shown in Part 1. Like, he's capable of things sometimes, but, like, he very much has problems, like, controlling his crackheadery and his anger.
Yeah.
And he'd never fix that. I
think, speaking of Dio, another bit that I wanted to briefly talk about is the senator who...
the senator?
Which, in the OVA movie is voiced by Charles Martinet, aka the voice of Mario.
The senator.
But anyway, I thought something that was interesting is, like, Dio, like, essentially kidnaps this dude and, like, forces him to be his driver and stuff, and he's, like, the senator tries to, like, rationalize it, like, oh, this is, like, a crazy nightmare or something. And there's one point where where the senator asks Dio, he's like, hey, like, you're gonna let me go, like, as soon as I get you to these guys, right? And Dio's like, no, I'm gonna kill you. And, like, but, like, the senator is, like, still listening to him.
He's lost everything by that time. He's like, well...
But this is kind of, like, the mental power that Dio has over people, you know,
we've
like,
seen that.
It's a life, like, the senator knows he is going to die. Dio says that he is going to be the one to kill him, and, like, but he just has this, charisma or, you know, terrifying sensuality to him. I mean, it's kind of silly to say, but I do think it is, you know, that's a part of it.
Dio turns all the straight guys gay. We all know this. He even turned the senator, the straightest man in the world.
And it's just, you know, like, I don't find Dio particularly intimidating as a villain. I just think, like, yeah, I don't know what it is. Maybe his design is too colorful for me, or, you know, he's just such a massive ham, basically. But
he's very funny.
Yeah, he's like funny, you know, but not like intentionally so. But I think this scene is interesting, just 'cause, like, this is what I find terrifying about Dio when I am, freaked out by him is, like, just the fact that he has such control over people without even having to, like, exercise any of his powers or anything.
Even in, like, the flashbacks with Khaki Pants, our boy.
Yeah.
Like, he was still, like, straight up, like, about to join him for a hot sec, and then he was like, wait, no.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had to flesh bud him. But, like, he still almost got him without the flesh bud. Like, even Avdol was like, huh. Except my man was like, alright, I'm gonna head out. I ain't taking this anymore. This is some bad vibes.
And I think, we have this... If we can, like, transition slightly, unless you wanted to say more about Dio.
Do I?
I mean, I have more to say about Dio, but also in relation to another character.
Well, feel free to do that. We can sort of go all over the place a little bit.
Okay. So
you don't need to be organized.
I think it's really interesting that, Dio and Jotaro, this is the final battle. And, as we mentioned all the way back in, like, the first episode, like, Jotaro is very much modeled after a punk or a delinquent and stuff like that. And, like, he's our good guy. And Dio is sort of, like, he has this authoritativeness to him. Like, he has this charismatic leader quality. He has,
Please don't let Dio become a world leader.
Yeah, God. Can you tell we're recording this during election week? Yeah, so we have Dio, who's this authority figure, and we have Jotaro, who is this punk / delinquent, and, like, he's our good guy. So it's like, I think, and, like, this is not something that's going to change. The protagonists of parts 4, 5, and 6 all have a delinquent sort of theme or model after them. So I think what's sort of interesting is that, like, basically what's being said here is, like, Dio has this facade of charisma, authoritativeness, all of these things that, like, make him a quote-unquote leader, but all that's a facade, whereas Jotaro is very honest about who he is. He's a delinquent. He does, if something pisses him off, it pisses him off. It could be a bully, it could not be a bully, things like that. But, like, that's what allows Jotaro to, like, win the fight in a way. It's like, like, Jotaro is, like, true to himself. He's not trying to be anything, other than who he is as a person. Whereas Dio, fancies himself as a sort of emperor of the world, as Enya calls him, but is ultimately just a dude who's in it for chaos, He doesn't want to control things. He just wants power, essentially.
Ah, shit, Dio won Florida. Oh, no.
Oh, God.
Oh, God. Oh, no, he's got Ohio. That's a pretty solid point, though. I vibe with that.
Yeah.
I don't really have much more to say on that. I just sort of closed it out, but I like that. We could probably skeet over into just discussing our boy, the Jute.
The Jute.
The Jute. Let's talk about the boys, if you're ready for that. The boys. I'm just going to go off about everyone. We'll just go back and forth. First, of course, since we were already talking about the Jute lad, Jotaro, our boy, he does get a little bit of character development happening here before he becomes sad.
Yeah.
Right here, he's just, I feel like his whole thing is he's becoming a bit, like, less repressed in a way.
Yeah.
Because he was really honest before, but at the same time, he had problems with, like, talking to people, and especially telling his mom that he loves her. And it's shown that he does. He's just really bad at saying it. He becomes more friendly. Like, he actually smiles. Good for him. He just becomes better at communicating. He starts to, towards the end, like, even in, like, the second half of part 3, like, he progressively gets a little bit more, like starts to show more appreciation for him and his bros and his mom, of course. And he's very, shown to be very happy to go home at the end.
Yeah.
So there's that whole thing. My man just, like, learns to talk to people after being forced to spend 50 days with a bunch of dudes that he doesn't like at first, but then grows to very much enjoy.
Yeah, I think, like, definitely, like, like, I remember, I think I said at the beginning of this that I think Jotaro's character arc can essentially be summed up as, like, him sort of learning to accept his, like, family, and, like, you know, both as a member of the Joestars and as, you know, his family that he finds with the Crusaders.
His boys.
And I think something that's, like, the little things here is that, Jotaro, like, it does a lot of, like, Joseph-y things in this fight, in terms of, like, trickery. He slips the magnet. He's essentially, he, like, is psychologically manipulating Dio in a lot of scenes. The magnet bit, which is something I always kind of forget about, but I think is really cool, where he puts the magnet on him, and he makes Dio think that that's what's causing his arm to move, when in actuality, the magnets are doing nothing. And then Star Platinum just, like, punches a hole, like, straight through his chest. And it's like, oh my god.
My man.
Which I just thought was, super cool. You know, he lets Dio believe that he gets crushed under the steamroller, when in actuality he's using Star Platinum to stop time, which is a little bit of an ass pull, but, you know, still, it's very satisfying to watch.
How about I manipulate the manipulator and just make him go absolutely nuts by fucking with his head?
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, I think that really is it, honestly. It's like, you know, like, Dio also, like, again, it's the charisma, it's the leader thing, and, like, Jotaro showing, like, hey, Dio is, like, just as malleable as, like, all the people he thinks are below him. Like, it really does not take much for Jotaro to throw Dio off his game, you know, in this fight.
Jotaro's a true Gen Z icon. He went there, he he reserved all the tickets to Dio's campaign. It really messed with him. Nobody showed up. My man was just so sad. So sad.
Yeah.
Alright, shall we move on to another character?
Sure thing.
Let's talk about, I wrote down a little bit of something for everyone, and my next one right here is Avdol, my man. He's not in these episodes, but I want to talk about him anyways, in relation to, like, the entire rest of the plot. I would say he's mostly unchanged at the end of it, because he's still, like, kind of a hypocrite, but, like, a very nice one. Who, you know, just, like, someone who values the lives of his friends more than he values his own life, and that sort of stays with him. That's literally how he dies. So, rip for my boy Avdol, they done him dirty, but at least he was pretty interesting and fun. I enjoyed him a lot.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to say about Avdol?
I do not have anything to say about Avdol.
Rip Avdol, we love you.
Because he's dead. No.
I just wanted to get that little last bit out.
I mean, fair enough, yeah. It's good. I mean, somewhat relatedly, I guess.
He's important to the plot. He's important to Polnareff. He's the Iroh to Polnareff's Zuko. Like, you know.
The next character I wanted to talk about was Joseph, because I think it's kind of interesting. Something I didn't really realize on my first watch of Stardust Crusaders is, like, Joseph's techniques and, like, what he does in fights is, like, again, very reminiscent of how he was in Part 2, where he's a trickster and a schemer and things like that. You have, of course, the Hermit Purple vest that he makes. And I thought that was, you know, it. And we brought up, like, how Jotaro pulls a lot of tricks on Dio as well. So I think I'm just curious of, like, what is necessarily being said here, because it's like, it's not that, like, Joseph's techniques are flawed necessarily. It's just like Jotaro does them better somehow, like, or maybe
he's improving upon what was already there.
Yeah, which I think is sort of like Jotaro's way of, like, you know, again, like, to tie into Jotaro's arc of, like, him being more family-oriented or, like, you know, focused or whatever. Like, that's sort of his way of, like, showing that he's learned from Joseph, and, like, he, you know, is doing all the, you know, I mean, he doesn't do it in the fight, but, like, all the legendary techniques of the Joestars, which is basically just like being a shitlord.
Being a shitlord, indeed.
So the other thing that I thought was kind of interesting is the bait and switch that they pull with Joseph, involving his death,
It's so good.
or lack thereof, because like when you first watch it, and you see the ghost, which is like JoJo shorthand for hey, this character's dead,
like actually.
Yeah. And it's he talks to Jotaro as well, the ghost Joseph, and he's like he talks about how the journey's been fun, but like this is like the family bonding thing again. This, like, I think I said, like, when we went over End of the World the first time, is that Stand Proud is like, yeah, like, we're going on an adventure and fun times, and End of the World is like, oh, like, shit's getting serious now. But like the fact that like Joseph like still considers like the journey fun, it's like it's like it was fun because he got to bond with his grandson and the rest of the squad, despite the fact that to Joseph, Polnareff and Jotaro are the only ones alive, and I just thought that like the fact that like it was like the journey, not the destination, which this is the longest animated JoJo part. Even part 4 and part 5 are not this long, which I don't know. I mean, I think it helps things feel a little bit more complete, I guess. There's sort of a bittersweetness to this ending.
Everyone is dead.
Yeah. But yeah, did you have anything you wanted to add on that point about Joseph? Because I have another point as well.
I would say just about that point, I would love to add on to that. However, the whole journey, it's the journey, not the end kind of vibe. I would love to talk more about that when we get to part 6.
Yeah, oh my god.
But I can't really do that right now.
We're going to do a whole episode on part 6's ending.
But
good
yeah,
lord.
I'll tell you, the part 6 ending very much affirms it's the means, it's the means, not the end kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
or the means to the end. It very much cements, the end of part 6 very much cements that.
Yeah. So the other thing that I wanted to bring up is this line that Joseph says when they're burning the body. And so, like, Jotaro, in the scene before, tells Dio, like, we've finally gotten everything back that you stole from us. He tells that to Dio. And then Joseph, in this scene, says the opposite. He says that they've lost something vast, and it's something that they'll never get back.
Literally several people's lives.
Yeah, like their friend, like hundreds of innocent people are dead. 3 of their friends are dead. Which I mean, I think it's a little bit of an interesting point. Definitely a subtle theme that we'll discuss in Diamond is Unbreakable is like age. And this is kind of like a little bit of a little peck of it, where Jotaro's only 17, I believe, and
a child.
So he's a lot more optimistic, about things. Like he feels like they've gotten vindication for the Joestars, but Joseph kind of sees it, he's cynical. Like, this is the second time, like, he's been through a major life and death situation. And, Joseph is probably, like, much more cynical. He's much more like, hey, like, Caesar died, like, a bunch of the Hamon trainers died, like, so many people in this dude's life who he cared about are gone. And it's a little bit a character thing. Like, we think of Joseph as like this very wacky, silly, lighthearted character, but I think that scene does show a bit of darkness that he sort of like built up just over the years of trying to be a hero. And it's like, I don't know, this is an interesting little character bit.
My man is sad.
Yeah.
He's been through a lot.
Sad Grandpa Joseph.
Sad Grandpa, who becomes senile Grandpa.
Yeah.
I also just love imagining how I've seen so many like memes about it online where my man just go, he's dead, right? He goes up there, oh, Caesar's waiting for him, and he's like, oh wait, I think my grandson's trying to revive me, I think I gotta go back, and Caesar's like, wait, bro, I have an idea. That was their whole, that's just, that I'm going to consider that canon, that Caesar told him to do that.
Naturally. He's like...
bro, I have this great idea.
Mamma mia.
Mamma mia, that's a spicy meatball.
I love the... Damn. Alright. I love the Instagram account Daily Mamma Mia, and it's just it's the scene from part 2 in the dub.
Mamma Mia! Oh my god, there's so many of those accounts, and I love them all so much. My personal favorite is the one that edits a different song over the torture dance every day. Shall we move on?
Yes, that sounds good.
All right, let's talk about khaki pants.
Khaki pants.
Khaki pants.
The one episode of character development that Kakyoin gets.
Khaki pants. You could argue that he has like a very subtle character arc at the end, which was it wasn't nearly as strong as it could have been, being revealed literally right at the end. It would have made a lot more sense if it was more at the beginning. Yeah,
because like those little bits of character like only make sense if you know what his backstory is.
So it's just like, knowing all of this, he became a lot more like brave, and the word I used in my notes was becoming more alive, oddly enough, because he wasn't really doing a whole lot, because he was sad and shit, because no one understands me and my imaginary friend. But no, he met people that were like him, and he learned to sort of be more of a active person and do more things, and just gives himself more of a presence, takes up more space,
Yeah, I think there's two interesting points out of that. The first one I'll say is, I think it's, on the point about being more alive, I think it says something that, he is literally missing, maybe 30% of his body, just from, being punched through the chest. And, literally, the last thing he does, when he's alive is, tries to communicate how, what the world's power is. And, he's that dedicated to these people. And, they're such close friends that, even, in his dying moments, he doesn't use them for himself. He uses them for his friends.
He didn't have that many friends beforehand, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, exactly.
Rip khaki pants.
The other thing I wanted to bring up is, there's this line where, Kakyoin is setting up, the radius or whatever, the net of...
20-meter radius emerald splash. No one can deflect it.
Oh, wait, he deflected it.
That's what happens literally every time. He's like, no one can deflect the emerald splash. Deflect the emerald splash, and then someone deflects it. He was like, how did you do that? And then, he says it every single time, and the same result.
But, yeah, he says, I'm going to use, invisibility as a power, so, this is he's socially isolated. He's invisible from kids in school. No one really notices him. He just kind of keeps to himself. But then this is him sort of using that element for his friends. Kakyoin is a very quiet person, as we've seen throughout this adventure, and but it is no longer a weakness for him. It is no longer a point of shame for him that he is not seen as much. Like, it is him, like, using that to, like, try and get the upper hand on Dio. You know, he's accepted his faults, or what he perceives as his faults, and, like, is using them as a strength to help people.
My man. My man.
Rip Kakyoin.
Rip.
Honestly, I just want to say real quick, though, that I knew a lot of these character deaths were coming the first time I watched it.
Just smell it.
It didn't really hit me that hard, but I gotta say, like, on this second time around, and I said this when we covered Avdol and Iggy last episode, but you know, Kakyoin's death, like, you know, it definitely got me a little bit this time.
I would also say the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the third time I've seen it in this year, I should mention. In this year.
I'm so glad we finished this before 2021. Otherwise, you would have been watching Stardust Crusaders for 2 years.
Yes, and now I don't have to watch it again for a bit. Perhaps one day.
But yeah, that's all I had to say about Kakyoin.
Love that guy. Let's talk about the man, the myth, the legend, Jean-Pierre Polnareff. The man, the myth, the legend. You want me to start? Because I can start.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. My man, of course, has the most character development out of them all the boys. He becomes much less impulsive. You can definitely see this, especially when he comes back in part 5. Mm-hmm. Spoiler alert! And learns that he can depend. You know, another big thing is that he learns that he can depend on others, because he had that whole thing where he was like, "I'm a lone wolf. I will not do this." And then Avdol's like, "You stupid goddamn!" Just called him a dumbass.
You goddamn motherfucker.
And I think that's probably the biggest thing he learned, is that he can depend on others, that he's not alone in the world, and that people are actually likely to understand his problems, because, you know, everyone has their sister murdered by murdered and raped by a stand user with 2 right hands. I mean, either way, everyone knows someone that has died and is hurt by it.
Yeah, people can understand Polnareff's pain.
And for some reason, through like the first part of his arc, he just didn't understand that other people could understand, and then, you know, Avdol's like, just gives him a little smack on the face and said, "You stupid." And then she's like, you know, we're all in this together, goddammit, and we're going through all of this, you know, there's a reason that we're all here. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you that. So my man just sort of figures that out, and, you know, grows very close to all the people that he originally sort of didn't want to grow close to, especially Iggy.
Yeah. It's kind of a weird, it's kind of like a twist, like, on the knight motif, you know. At the beginning, he's all about revenge, he's all about, like, you know, justice, like, I guess if we were to phrase it in sort of a knightly way, and, like, that's his resolve. But what I think is interesting here is that, now, like, Polnareff has adopted more of, like, chivalry as, like, the knight's code, like, honor, and, like, that's what allows him to... Honor! You dropped your honor over there. What?
I look over there, I think it's your honor. Where?
No, but he's become more interested in, like, his personal honor and his personal morality. I think because, like, Polnareff really doesn't do a whole lot in these episodes, but the conversation that he has with Dio at the very, very beginning, I think, is interesting. He says that being a loser is worse than death, which, you know, it's kind of a weird way to say it, but basically what he's saying is, like, you know, like, being, like, someone's, like, slave or servant or what have you is, like, and, you know, like, debasing yourself like that is gonna be worse than dying. I think as well, this is sort of, like, reinforced by the fact that he tells Dio, like, when Dio's trying to get him to join his side, he's like, "I've already died once, like, I'm not gonna die again." So, you know, he considers, like, being stripped of his will, through the flesh bud to be, like, his death, and I think that's very fitting, because You know, sort of, I think the episode where we see a big change in Polnareff as we broke down when we got to it is the Judgment episode, which is all about resurrection and life, and you know, finally accepting that his sister is dead, and so like him being able to accept the death of someone allows him to like gain rebirth for himself and like grow as a human being. And so this is the rebirth after his death. And then we might go back to talking about like Dio here for a hot sec.
Just for a hot sec. Sugar Daddy Dio.
But it ties into Polnareff as well. Where like one thing he says is like he's no longer afraid of Dio, which we talked about, and like I kind of want to like break this off into a larger discussion. It's a little bit silly, but I honestly think it's worth discussing. Is this tie-in, you know, that we've been talking about, like this connection between sensuality or like, you know, sexual desire and like fear. You know, I think Polnareff saying that he's not afraid of Dio is like whatever supernatural or, you know, just purely sexual control Dio has over people is like not gonna work on Polnareff. Like he's
too much of a top for that.
Maybe, yeah. And I feel like there's something with this connection between like sexual desire and fear. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that.
So let's get some ethos up in here. As someone who has been forced to read 3 Ayn Rand novels, and as a self-proclaimed bottom activist myself, I feel like I have some authority here. Not really. But I'm trying to see, here's the thing. For some reason, I decided not to think about that when I was preparing my notes.
I wanted to block it out of my mind.
It's weird because I talked about it last episode, but I just forgot about it. I thought we were done, but I guess we're not. It's a lot more. I feel like it's very complicated yet also very simple. As I said, they're Dio's bottoms. They very, you know, masochism.
Yeah, it's
people. You know, some people just like to, you know, Dio just knows what people like and just, you know, uses that to his advantage. This being fear.
Or maybe honestly, like. God.
Some people like to be afraid.
It's a good thing we don't monetize these, because otherwise this would be immediately demonetized.
The amount of times we say fuck already.
But
let's say it again just because we can. Fuck.
Maybe it is like a top bottom thing, honestly. like what Dio is like. I mean, like, and like I'm talking more of like a supernatural, like in the soul type thing, where it's like you know, like sort of like Dio is like exploiting like what Dio's exploiting what he believes is like a person's desire to like be submissive or like a servant. You know, he has the line again about like people just want to feel calm, and what Polnareff is doing is like he's rejecting that theory. He's saying that, you know, like this is just Dio manipulating people, and because I am not afraid, like Polnareff is saying, like, I have no desire to be calm. I am pissed off. I am, you know, you murdered my friends. I'm gonna kick your ass. And so it's, and I think that kind of ties in as well with the scene after where Polnareff is like, look, like Dio killed our friends. Like, he's gonna kill a lot of innocent people. If we, you know, it might be safer for us if we wait till morning, but we gotta kill him now. I mean, this is like, you know, if we let this monster like continue to be, then like we're failing people essentially. That was a lot.
I actually had something to add onto that, but I sort of forgot what it was.
Something about Polnareff and like
Ah, yes, there it is. Woo! All right, I found it. Okay, so back. Let's talk about Jareth the Goblin King again. So, we all know what that y'all have seen Labyrinth. I hope so. If not, go watch it.
It's a good movie.
To understand my point here. So, a part of the plot of the movie is that there is this 14, 15 something. I don't know how old she is, but she's very young. This young girl who wants to be taken away and like has this crush on this fictional character. Like she thinks that's what she wants. She wants to get away from it all, and then he's like, haha, I will kidnap your brother. And that's what she wanted at first, but then once she's actually put in that situation and he's like, yes, I am terrifyingly sensual, hello, you definitely thirst for me, why don't you just like, as I will bring up a lovely quote, fear me, love me, do as I say, and I will be your slave. And yes, I was not reading off of a paper because I've seen that movie many times. And I feel like that quote especially is very much something that Dio would say.
Yeah.
Fear me, love me, do as I say, and I will be your slave. Sort of like, it seems contradictory, but when you think about it, it really isn't. Because, all right, how do I explain this? It's like, okay. I'm trying to figure out a way to explain it, but it makes sense to me when I hear it. For some people it doesn't make sense, but to me it makes sense because it's okay. What about you, Thomas? You have a better way to put this than I do.
I mean, it makes sense. I think what you're trying to say is that like for a lot of people, like there is sort of this desire for comfort, like an easy answer. Yes. And like that's what Jareth is in Labyrinth. That's what Dio is in Stardust Crusaders. And so like people are just gonna naturally like be drawn to that.
Yes, thank you, Thomas.
Yeah.
Now to the second part of my point.
Okay.
I needed that. Okay. Somehow you put that better than I could.
Teamwork.
Because this is why there's two people doing this podcast. So it's very much about the sense of security here, obviously. Like she has to go on this whack-ass adventure with all of her weird goblin friends that she makes along the way. Literal goblin friends. And she could give up at any time and just vibe around and just, do what she originally wanted to do. But she instead decides to take the hard way out because she knows it's the right way. She has to save her brother. She can't just live like this. And I will go back to something that is historically somewhat relevant. There is let's talk about feminism. Let's talk about feminism. So what we got here is that we at the JoJo podcast subscribe to such things. Of course we are, because we're not crazy.
Yes.
And but some people don't for some reason. Anyways, so we have.
Oh boy.
Okay, we're not gonna talk too much about this, but we are gonna talk about one thing.
Yes.
There is a reason why a lot of there are some women, one of them being me, who does not really want that, who basically there's security versus freedom when it comes to a lot of feminist topics, as someone who is a college student. And so I'm, a lot of times, like in this day and age, and especially in the older, like maybe like 50 years ago, there was that option there. Well, there was less of an option, but like the option still remains to a lot of female human people who are cis, to choose security or freedom, basically to live a 1950s style life. You're just the wife with the kids, and you're like, completely protected by like your husband and what he makes. Like there's still an option to choose that in this day and age, and a lot of people did choose that only because they valued security over freedom. But other people just I think about this debate a lot, and it's just people have been moving more into valuing freedom, even though it might be it's more difficult but more rewarding at the same time. This is why Polnareff did not choose to go with Dio. This is why Sarah turned away from Jareth. It's because they discovered that freedom is more, it might be harder, but it's more rewarding than, being comfortable. That life isn't just about, as Dio said, he said the ultimate goal is to achieve peace of mind, but it really isn't. Like, yeah. I don't want to, it sounds kind of weird, but it's more like, the ultimate goal is not to achieve peace of mind, but to be free, you know? Because being secure isn't necessarily a comfortable life. You gotta have some adventure in there. You have to have some sort of uncertainty, or else what kind of life are you living?
Yeah, I think like the sense of adventure as well. I think that's a really interesting. God, there's so much I want to respond to with that. That's a really excellent point.
We'll
I feel
do
like.
all of them.
All right,
just do it.
Well, to quickly like finish up the feminist, or to add on to the feminist point rather. I mean, it is interesting because I think we think a lot about like the male figures of JoJo, especially. There's not a lot of like notable female characters.
That's why I put Holly in the first thumbnail of the first episode, because she deserves it.
And so we have Dio, who's the villain, and who's kind of this like very masculine figure in this sense of like he's totally ripped and he's a beefcake, yeah, and he's like hot sexy vampire dude. And the story starts with him like asserting that like masculine power over Holly, essentially.
Literally just a mom and a housewife.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I will say, like, I think examining this through, like, a feminist lens kind of is undercut by the fact that, like, all the all the heroes are guys.
Well, you can examine it without, like,
yes, of course.
Well, that's what I just did. You could just look past that. As someone who is taking a very lovely gay class at college right now, and who has an entire folder in my goddamn computer labeled queer theory, because I just kept all of the stuff we were supposed to read.
Yeah, and like, but I mean, I think it's a really great way to analyze this. The other thing I want to say in response is like the point about like adventure. It's like, because you think about it, it's like maybe it's not just that like Joseph's like, oh, like we had a fun time on this journey and like that's why it was satisfying. It's like, they had to like, everyone like grew throughout this journey and changed as people. It's not just that the adventure was like for the sake of having fun or killing Dio or whatever. It's like this is a moment of personal growth for these characters, and like they did not get that way. They did not like get to be like more true to themselves and their freedom without having gone through all of these struggles and like trials and tribulations and things like that.
You cannot change and grow if you are safe. That is the thing. In order to become a better person, you must be put in a situation that you are unfamiliar with. And, my man just doesn't know what peace of mind is, because I feel like most people that achieve peace of mind have been through a lot because of that, and they sort of reach that in the end. But that's still not what they cared about. What was important is how they got there, the things they learned along the way, and that at points there were times that they didn't know things, and that they've accepted that they didn't know those things, but the fact that they learned them is all that ended up mattering, and how they ended up learning them. So basically, be free. Do not choose to be safe, because you will not become a better person, and you certainly won't have any fun. Do something fun. Be free.
The other, and like, this will probably be the last serious point for me, because we talked about everything, but something I just thought of while we were talking is I wonder if there's maybe a sort of religious commentary going on here.
Part 6.
Yeah, especially part 6. But in terms of just narrowing it down to part 3, we talked about like Dio means God in Italian.
Straight up doing. The best part is that Araki probably didn't even know that when he made him.
Yeah.
He just named him after Ronnie James Dio.
Of course, yeah, but Dio means God in Italian, and we've been talking about this sort of cult that he has, and it sort of makes me wonder, like, is there religious commentary going on here? Is this Araki saying that, like, this security over freedom, internal debate that people have, like, is he sort of saying that, like, or is the story saying, rather, that, like, people find that security in religion, in having a God that they can worship, and you can only sort of achieve freedom like Polnareff if you reject that god of like love or fear, you know, sexuality, whatever. You can only find like freedom and growth if you reject that.
I would say yes. I would say that's definitely a part of what it's trying to say, especially when you consider part 6, and especially when you consider even in part 3, it definitely had a culty religious sort of vibe to it. Like all them people in cloaks. What is this? The Illuminati?
Yeah.
Like, it definitely had that sort of vibe where like people, you know, that is the main reason why people have religion. That is why religion is a thing, because it gives people a sense of security. The security is oftentimes false. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And I would definitely say that a part of, you know, JoJo, at least in part 3, a theme that people don't really talk about is the whole security, you know, freedom thing.
Yeah.
And more people should talk about it. It's pretty cool. So yeah, religion definitely, like, this is why I think this current day and age we're living in is interesting, because more people are rejecting religion than ever and choosing, you know, they're actively choosing a life that on paper looks worse, but in reality really isn't.
Yeah, or it's just, you know, like nothing worth having is, you know, going to be achieved like free or whatever, however that saying goes. You get what I'm saying? And so I think as well, like something else I just thought of, by the way, this is why I love doing these podcasts. I feel like I learn just so much.
Oh, I did too, literally about 5 seconds ago, and I'd love to talk about it, but that would take way too long.
Yeah.
I might bring it up.
I mean, we can make this a beefer, honestly. This is the finale.
We're permitted.
So is like, you know, like Dio and like the world, like their primary colors are warm colors, like yellow.
Just yellow. That's it. Only yellow and a little bit of green.
Yeah, and like Dio's wearing like a black jumpsuit as well. But like, you know, yellow is like a clear color motif, and Jotaro, you know, covered in black.
Purple.
Star Platinum is purple, which is like not a warm color at all.
Well, the thing is that purple and yellow are complementary colors, and they look good together.
Well, they do, but like there's this contrast of like yellow, very inviting, very warm color, but like Dio is a bastard. And then you have Jotaro, who is our good guy, but, you know, is kind of like black and purple is like a very like villainous color combination. I feel like you see that associated with a lot of villains, the colors black and purple.
Oh yeah.
But he's our hero.
He's just a punk. He's emo. He's edgy.
So he
listens to my chem.
What does Gerard Way stand? Black Parade.
Yes.
Just a bunch of skeletons vibing.
It's an army of skeletons. Hell yeah.
So you said you had something else you just thought of?
So this is going to get really real for us.
Okay.
So I would say we're in a lovely week right now. We're not going to talk about the week, but it's the fact that there's a lot of stuff happening. It doesn't really necessarily matter what the stuff is, but as I said, a lot of younger people, especially today, because we're younger people too,
yeah.
And neither of us have a religion, and it's. I definitely think that I was just reading yesterday for purposes some like the worst possible conservative news that I could have ever read. It was just about like there was some like climate change denying stuff, and it definitely had the vibe of like the kids these days don't know what they're doing because like they're sad. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's a fair point. As I said, it's not a fair point. It just doesn't, they don't realize, I guess. It doesn't look, it's not, fuck. It's not a life that looks...
don't understand your accent.
It's a life that doesn't look good on paper because objectively it has like the most bad things happening, but it's also the one that is the most fulfilling. So I think it's something that a lot of people who criticize, you know, depressed little Gen Z and like for like making almost like not necessarily making themselves depressed, but like at the same time kind of are, only because they are choosing to be honest and choosing to be free instead of to be, you know, in the dark about things, instead of, you know, not knowing they're choosing to know things instead of to not know things, and choosing to be free instead of to be safe. Yeah. And that is where, you know, that's where everyone's like, oh, that means you must be doing something wrong since you're less happy. But then people, you know, but then they realize that they're actually, despite like oftentimes being less happy, you know, a lot of the times when they are happy, it's even more fulfilling.
This is something I've been thinking about a lot, especially in relation to part 4. But I think that's a really excellent point as well. Like maybe the fact that like Joseph like goes down is like sort of like saying like he's part of the older generation, like, and what he's doing is good, like it's helpful, we're glad he's there, but it needs to be a new generation, because like Dio is like this ancient evil, he's like over 100 years old. He is responsible,
still doesn't think that women should show their ankles.
Yes. He doesn't know what cars are.
A man's old, goddamn.
And I think that you could almost tie that into the feminist theory we were talking about as well. Like, he's this patriarchal figure. And then we have Jotaro, who is he's not even technically an adult. He's 17. And he's the one
punches in the shin so hard he dies.
Yeah, he's the one who brings down like this sort of system that Dio has built for himself.
Yeah.
With his big old, mostly naked punchy boy.
So I'm going to... I forgot that I had one more serious point. If you are done.
I'm done, yeah.
So I will. It also connects perfectly to my like the way that we are ending off here connects perfectly into my serious point. I'm gonna do the good old trademark Emily end offs right here. You remember what I did in part 2? That was pretty spicy. I'm gonna do one of those. So let's talk about the plot. So besides all the technical stuff, oftentimes not making any sense whatsoever, I would say that there is something very interesting about part 3, despite it being supposedly the worst part in some respects. You could debate about that all day.
Yeah.
But it functions as both the beginning and the end of JoJo, which I would call the midpoint. It is the last bit of the old generation and the first bit of the new generation simultaneously at the same time. Because I would call them like old gen and new gen JoJo's, like fucking Pokemon.
Yeah.
And so the old gen is, so Jotaro's sort of like the midpoint. He is not really the old gen, but he's not really the new one either. Although I would argue that he is more of the old one, just to divide it up nicely into 3s.
Yeah.
So you got the first 3, you got, Jonathan, Joseph, and Jotaro. Then you got Josuke, Giorno, and Jolene. And the reason why I would say that this is the midpoint is because this is where, the person that caused all the problems for everyone was indeed Dio. And this is when he legitimately dies. He is gone.
Yeah.
Like, his... So this is, the whole first 3 parts are, maybe not the second, but it's definitely sort of trying to defeat this one problem. And after they finally defeat it, it's, the stuff that he has caused has still not been erased. The next 3 parts, 4, 5, and 6, are them dealing with the consequences of what he has done. And it's, once back to the good old toxic masculinity theory.
Yeah.
The next 3 JoJo's are like the least, you could call Giorno very morally ambiguous, but I would say that they are the most like morally good people, I would say. It's sort of, it seems like they're the most well put together out of all of them. They progressively, like, as the generations go on, people learn more and more things, and I feel like it's the same here, where, like, Josuke knows more than Jotaro, and Giorno knows more than Josuke, and Jolene knows more than all of them, because they've simply lived longer, they've lived in a society that has gone past certain things, and it's interesting to think about that. That's why I feel like it, despite the build-up not being the best, well, it sort of is. I will say why in a second. It's not the best, but it's still pretty solid. It is the midpoint, and that has a certain, like, powerful nostalgia to it. That's why Last Train Home is, like, super, like, my personal favorite outro, and it probably will remain to be that way. So there's that whole thing. It's very much the midpoint. It is the start of something new. But it's also the end of something. It is like every part is a beginning and the end, but this is like the the true midpoint.
Mm-hmm. It is literally the midpoint.
It is literally and figuratively the midpoint.
This like first, I guess you could call it greater story arc. Like part 6 is the end, and part 3 is it's halfway between 1 and 6.
But it also closes something incredibly important and opens the door for like I sort of coined these terms to myself, which I like to call sunset stories and sunrise stories, where a sunset story is basically about a bad situation happening to a person, and the end is the point in which they can start moving forward and healing from it. But a sunrise story is where all that bad stuff has already happened, and the story is about them healing from it. I would say that 1 through 3 is a sunset story, and then 4 through 6 is a sunrise story. They're, most of the bad, like, when it comes to, like, not really the characters, but when it comes to, like, the big overarching plot, this is them, like, healing from all the past shenanigans.
And part 3 literally ends on a sunrise with Dio's body being disintegrated.
And we love some symbolism. And, I still very much enjoy part 3 because somehow I was able to watch it 3 times in 1 year and not be bothered by it. It very much has the boys kind of appeal. All their silly shenanigans and interactions is what gets you attached to them. It's all very fun, and that's why I enjoy part 3.
Yeah. I think if I were to share my final thoughts as well, this was a very weird experience for me, going through this story again, just because it's like, you guys heard it on the earlier episodes where we were really struggling, and like we literally just took the Death 13 episodes to just like complain about stuff.
That was so good. Nothing happened.
We were, there were a lot of times I think where we were burnt out and tired, and really did not want to talk about Stardust Crusaders.
Once we get to that end, though.
But honestly, like, once we got to the Vanilla Ice parts, and especially the Dio parts, like, I was very excited. I was very hyped. I got a lot more emotionally invested in these characters. I think that's something that I've ultimately said about every JoJo part that we've broken down so far, is the fact that we are so closely analyzing this series has made me appreciate every part more, even Phantom Blood, which I still say is the worst.
I've grown an appreciation for Phantom Blood.
Yeah, I still enjoyed it, and I think very much like the Crusaders, where we started out really strong. Towards the middle, things started to look a bit dire. We're getting our ass kicked, but like ultimately it ends okay. The job fulfilled. I'm really happy we went on this journey together, honestly, Emily. I feel like part 4 is going to be a very different beast for us in terms of breaking it down. I think we're going to have a lot more to say.
There's going to be content.
But I won't lie and say that this was still a blast to do from beginning to end.
Tom of Ass has a great theory about part 4, guys. It's really exciting.
Yeah. All right. Should we wrap up with the silly stuff?
Yes. Let's talk about memes.
Briefly talk about them real quick.
Literally every single meme that is in this entire franchise is in this fight. All of them. Every single one. All of the notable ones. You have, oh, you're approaching me?
Yeah.
Instead of running away, you're coming right to me? I can't beat the shit out of you from all the way over here. Oh ho, well then come as close as you'd like. I've done that twice now, and I'm glad.
It's still badass. I'm trying to think.
The stairs.
The stairs are great. The stairs are great because of when you think deeper about it and what is actually happening, where Dio stops time, runs down the stairs, moves Polnareff down, and then runs back up.
Picks him up, places him lower on the staircase, and runs back up there. And it's like, okay, go. The senator is funny.
The senator is funny. The fact that he's voiced by Charles Martinet in the movie as well is still crazy to me. By the way, we're not going to cover the movie next time. We're going to go to Diamond is Unbreakable. We're tired. We're going to cover it at some point, but just not now. It's like one of the last things that happens, but the steamroller obviously is iconic. It is Dio's super move in every single JoJo fighting game. It's in Heritage for the Future, All-Star Battle, and Eyes of Heaven.
My man,
which is just amazing.
It's great. No one can deflect the Emerald Splash. Shut the fuck up, everybody does.
Man, it's so brutal that the JoJo fan base just calls Kakyoin a donut.
Oh, they call that to, like, literally everyone that gets donutted. Abakio's a donut, rest in peace.
You want a donut holder?
Who else is a donut? There's more.
Bucciarati, I guess.
Is a donut. Let's see, what else do I have? We have the fact that, Dio was like, I want to find out. You know, they had that flashback. He's like, I want to find out how powerful my stand is. So can you shoot me point blank with a shotgun, please? He just has one of his weird cult members shoot him, like, from, 5 feet away with a shotgun to see how powerful his stand is.
You know, there are so many scenes in these last episodes that I classify as badass but silly.
Yes.
And that's one of them as well.
And also, we have another lovely case of the Tommy gun is stored in the ass.
Yep.
Which is a statement that I've been using for literally every ass pull. I just say that now. For, even when we're just talking about, other shows to other people. I'm like, the Tommy gun is stored in the ass. And, yeah, just stop time. Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
Stop time's a bit of an ass pull, even though it's cool.
And my last silly thing, I will end it just as I begun. Weird Al canonically exists in the JoJo universe.
Yeah, that's all the silly stuff I had as well. Alright, so I guess we're done. Thank God. Alright. No. If you want to see more of the silly, semi-serious stuff that I do, you can follow me on Twitter at Thomas M. Brickman. I also do another podcast with my buddy Kevin where we talk about video game news and reviews. You can find archives of that on YouTube. It's post-game content. We are also doing live shows every Friday from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tune into those by just going to wecb.fm. And if you want to keep up with updates and things relating to that show, be sure to follow at PostGameCon. That's at PostGameCon on Twitter. And Emily, where can people find you on the internet?
I would first like to start this off by saying that the M in Thomas's name stands for mitochondria.
I don't know what you're referencing there, but okay.
I'm not referencing anything. I just thought of it and I felt the need to say it.
Top powerhouse of the cell S. Brickman.
No, I mean the M, like your your middle name.
The middle name, yeah.
I was like, Thomas M. Brickman. That's mitochondria.
Thomas Powerhouse of the Cell Brickman. All right. Oh, God damn it.
I got this. Don't worry. Twitter at Emily Winkles. Yes, check me out. I'm cool.
And if you want to keep up with updates, news, Emily's live readings of whatever JoJo part she happens to be
I'm on 7.
You can keep up with that by following at iwanttofightar1 on Twitter and iwanttofightaraki on Instagram. And with all that said, we'll see you guys next time for Diamond is Unbreakable, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 4, Episodes 1 and 2. We'll see you guys next time.
Eat